Life is a journey filled with moments that test strength, patience, and clarity. Many people move through this journey guided not by conscious choice, but by waves of emotion that rise and fall without warning. These emotions can feel powerful, overwhelming, and sometimes uncontrollable. They can push a person toward decisions that seem right in the moment, but later bring regret, confusion, and pain. From childhood to adulthood, people are rarely taught how to truly understand their emotions. Instead, they are told to follow their heart or suppress what they feel. Both approaches can lead to imbalance, because emotions are neither enemies nor masters. They are signals that require awareness and direction. When emotions take control without guidance, they can shape behavior in ways that limit growth, damage relationships, and create unnecessary struggle. Imagine a person who reacts instantly to anger, losing opportunities because of harsh words or broken trust, or someone who is controlled by fear, avoiding risks, and never discovering their true potential. Or even someone driven by temporary happiness, making impulsive decisions that lead to long-term consequences. These are not rare situations. They are part of everyday life for millions of people who have never learned to pause, reflect, and respond with intention. Taking control of life does not mean eliminating emotions. It means building the ability to recognize what you feel, understand why it is happening, and decide what action truly serves your future. This is where real power begins. It is the shift from reacting to responding, from being controlled to being in control. This journey is not about perfection. It is about awareness, growth, and practice. It requires honesty with oneself and the courage to face uncomfortable truths. It demands patience, because change does not happen instantly, but through consistent effort and reflection. Every moment of awareness is a step forward, every controlled response is a victory, and every lesson learned is a foundation for a stronger life. Throughout this journey, you will discover that emotions can become allies rather than obstacles. When guided with clarity, they can provide insight, motivation, and strength. They can help you build deeper connections, make wiser decisions, and create a life that is not driven by impulse, but shaped. The path to mastering emotions is the path to mastering life. It is a journey of understanding, discipline, and transformation. And it begins with a simple realization that you are not your emotions. You are the one who chooses how to act upon them. Chapter 1. Understanding the power of emotions. Emotions are one of the most powerful forces in human life. They shape thoughts, influence decisions, and drive actions, often without conscious awareness. From the moment a person wakes up until the moment they fall asleep, emotions quietly guide behavior, sometimes in helpful ways, and sometimes in ways that create problems. Understanding this power is the first step toward taking control of life. Every emotion carries energy. Anger can feel like fire spreading quickly through the body. Fear can feel like a heavy weight holding a person back. Happiness can feel like lightness, lifting the spirit. These feelings are real and intense, but they eventually fade. The problem begins when a person believes that these emotions must be obeyed immediately without question. Consider a man named Armin, who worked in a busy office environment. One day, his manager criticized his work in front of others. In that moment, Armin felt a surge of anger. His heart beat faster, his face grew warm, and his thoughts became sharp and defensive. Without thinking, he raised his voice and argued back. The room became silent, and the situation turned uncomfortable later. Armin regretted his reaction because his response affected his reputation and relationships at work. If Armin had understood the power of his emotions, he might have responded differently. He could have noticed the anger rising inside him, recognized it as a natural reaction, and chosen to stay calm in that moment. He could have waited, listened, and then addressed the issue later in a controlled and respectful way. This simple shift from reaction to response could have changed the outcome completely. Emotions are not wrong. They are signals that something matters. They can point to values, needs, and experiences that require attention. Anger might signal that something feels unfair. Fear might signal a perceived risk. Joy might signal alignment with something meaningful. The key is to understand that these signals are not commands, they are information. Many people confuse intensity with truth. When an emotion feels strong, they assume it must be right. For example, a person might feel extremely jealous and believe that their partner is doing something wrong, even without evidence. This can lead to accusations, conflict, and damage to trust. In reality, the emotion of jealousy may be rooted in insecurity or past experiences, rather than the present situation. A young woman named Sarah often felt anxious when her friends did not reply to her messages quickly. She would imagine that they were ignoring her or did not value her friendship. This anxiety would lead her to send multiple messages or withdraw completely. One day, she decided to reflect on her feelings. She realized that her anxiety came from a fear of being unimportant, which was shaped by earlier experiences in her life. Once she understood this, she began to challenge her thoughts and respond more calmly. Her relationships improved because she was no longer reacting. This is the hidden power of emotions. They can either distort reality or reveal deeper truths, depending on how they are handled. Without awareness, emotions can create illusions, making small problems seem large and manageable situations feel overwhelming. With awareness, emotions can become tools for insight, guiding a person toward growth and understanding. Another important aspect of emotional power is its effect on decision-making. People often make life-changing choices based on temporary feelings. A person might quit a job at a moment of frustration or end a relationship during an argument. These decisions may feel justified in the moment, but once the emotion fades, the consequences remain. There is a story of a young entrepreneur named Bilal who faced a major setback in his business. After months of hard work, a deal fell through, and he felt deep disappointment and anger. In that emotional state, he considered giving up completely, believing that all his efforts were wasted. Instead of acting immediately, he decided to wait. He took time to calm his mind and reflect. After a few days, his perspective changed. He saw the situation not as a failure, but as a learning experience. He adjusted his strategy and continued working. Eventually, he achieved success that would not have been possible if he had allowed his emotions to control his decision. This example shows that emotions can create a narrow view, focusing only on the present feeling, rather than the bigger picture. When a person steps back and allows the emotion to settle, they gain clarity and the ability to make better choices. Emotions also influence how people see themselves. A person who frequently feels fear may begin to believe that they are weak. A person who often feels anger may see themselves as aggressive or difficult. These identities are not fixed truths, but patterns created by repeated emotional experiences. When a person learns to manage emotions, they also begin to reshape their identity. Take the example of Hassan, who always believed he was not confident. He avoided speaking in public because he felt nervous every time he tried. Instead of accepting this as a permanent trait, he decided to face his fear gradually. He started with small steps, speaking in front of a few people, then slowly increasing his exposure. Each time he felt fear, but chose to act anyway. Over time, his confidence grew, and his identity changed. He no longer saw himself as someone controlled by fear, but as someone capable of facing challenges. The power of emotions lies not in their presence, but in how they are handled. A person who ignores emotions may become disconnected, while a person who is ruled by them may become unstable. The balance comes from awareness, understanding, and control. To begin this journey, a person must learn to pause. This pause creates space between feeling and action. It allows the mind to observe what is happening instead of being carried away. For example, imagine feeling sudden anger during a conversation. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause for a few seconds. You take a breath and notice the emotion. You ask yourself what is causing this feeling and what response would be most helpful. This simple act can prevent unnecessary conflict and lead to a more thoughtful outcome. Over time, this practice becomes a habit. The gap between emotion and reaction grows wider, and within that gap a person gains control. They no longer feel like a passenger in their own life, but the driver making conscious decisions. Understanding the power of emotions is the foundation for everything that follows. It is the realization that emotions are strong but not unmanageable, that they influence life but do not have to control it. This awareness opens the door to growth, discipline, and transformation. Every person has the ability to develop this control. It does not depend on background intelligence or external circumstances. It depends on willingness to observe, learn, and practice. With time and effort, emotions become less overwhelming and more understandable. They become part of the journey rather than obstacles in the way. As this journey continues, the next step is to understand why emotions arise so quickly and how the mind and body work together to create these reactions. This deeper understanding will provide the tools needed to strengthen control and move forward with clarity and confidence. The science behind emotional reactions. Emotions may feel mysterious and unpredictable, but they are deeply rooted in the biology of the human brain and body. Every reaction that a person experiences has a physical process behind it. Understanding this process gives a person the ability to step out of confusion and into control. It turns emotions from something overwhelming into something understandable and manageable. Inside the brain, there is a small but powerful structure responsible for emotional reactions. It constantly scans the environment for danger or reward and reacts instantly to what it perceives. This reaction happens much faster than logical thinking, which is why people often respond emotionally before they have time to think clearly. Imagine walking down a street and suddenly hearing a loud noise behind you. Your body reacts immediately. Your heart starts beating faster, your muscles tense, and your mind becomes alert. In that moment, you do not stop to analyze the situation logically. Your body prepares for action. This is a survival mechanism that has helped humans stay alive for thousands of years. However, the same system that protects from real danger also reacts to everyday situations that are not truly harmful. A simple comment from a colleague, a disagreement with a friend, or a mistake at work can trigger the same intense response. The body does not always distinguish between physical danger and emotional discomfort. Consider the story of Danish, who often felt attacked during conversations. Even when someone gave simple feedback, he would feel defensive. His body reacted as if he was under threat. His voice would become louder, his tone sharper, and his words more aggressive. Later, he would realize that the situation did not require such a strong reaction, but in the moment, it felt real and unavoidable. One day, Danish decided to learn about how his brain worked. He discovered that his reactions were automatic responses created by his mind to protect him. Once he understood this, he began to practice slowing down his reactions. When he felt defensive, he reminded himself that he was not in danger. He took a breath and allowed his thinking mind to catch up. Over time, his reactions became calmer and more controlled. This shows an important truth. Emotional reactions are fast, but they are not final. There is always a moment, even if it is very small, where a person can step in and change the outcome. Another key part of emotional science is the connection between thoughts and feelings. Emotions do not appear without reason. They are often created by the way a person interprets a situation. Two people can experience the same event, but feel completely different emotions because their thoughts are different. For example, two students receive the same grade on an exam. One student thinks this means failure and feels discouraged. The other student sees it as a chance to improve and feels motivated. The situation is the same, but the emotional response is different because the interpretation is different. There is a young man named Imran who struggled with self-doubt. Every time he faced a challenge, he would think that he was not capable. These thoughts created fear and hesitation, which prevented him from taking action. His lack of action then reinforced his belief, creating a cycle that was difficult to break. Emran decided to change this pattern by becoming aware of his thoughts. Whenever he noticed a negative thought, he questioned it. He asked himself whether it was truly accurate or just a habit of thinking. Slowly, he replaced those thoughts with more balanced ones. His emotions began to change, and he started taking actions that he had avoided before. This connection between thoughts and emotions is powerful because it means that by changing thoughts, a person can influence how they feel. It does not mean ignoring reality, but it means choosing a perspective that is constructive rather than limiting. The body also plays a major role in emotional reactions. Physical states can influence emotions just as much as thoughts. Lack of sleep, poor nutrition, and constant stress can make emotions more intense and harder to control. A tired mind reacts faster and with less patience, while a healthy body supports calm and balanced responses. Take the example of Aisha, who worked long hours and rarely took care of her health. She often felt irritated and overwhelmed even by small problems. She believed that her environment was the cause of her emotions, but when she started improving her sleep and taking short breaks during the day, she noticed a significant change. Her reactions became less intense, and she was able to handle situations with more clarity. This shows that emotional control is not only mental, but also physical. Taking care of the body strengthens the ability to manage emotions effectively. Another important concept is emotional memory. The brain stores past experiences and uses them to predict future situations. If a person has faced rejection before, they may feel fear in similar situations, even if there is no real threat in the present moment. A man named Khalid avoided social gatherings because he had been embarrassed in front of others in the past. Even though years had passed, his mind still connected social situations with that negative experience. His body reacted with anxiety every time he was invited somewhere. Khalid decided to face this gradually. He started attending small gatherings with people he trusted. At first he felt uncomfortable, but he stayed present and allowed himself to experience the situation without escaping. Over time, his brain began to form new memories that replaced the old fear. His emotional response changed because his experiences changed. This demonstrates that while the brain may create automatic reactions, those reactions can be retrained through new experiences and consistent effort. Understanding the science behind emotions also reveals why suppression does not work. Ignoring or pushing emotions away does not remove them. It often makes them stronger beneath the surface, like pressure building inside a closed space. Suppressed emotions eventually find a way to release, sometimes in unexpected and harmful ways. Instead of suppression, the goal is regulation. This means allowing emotions to exist while guiding how they are expressed. A person can feel anger without acting aggressively, or feel sadness without losing hope. This balance is what creates stability and control. There is also the concept of emotional momentum. When a person stays in an emotional state for too long, it becomes stronger and harder to change. For example, if someone continues to think about a negative event, their anger or sadness increases. The longer the focus remains, the more powerful the emotion becomes. Breaking this momentum requires a conscious shift. This can be done by changing focus, engaging in a different activity, or simply stepping away from the situation. Even a small interruption can prevent an emotion from growing too strong. Consider a woman named Nita, who would often overthink situations. She would replay conversations in her mind and imagine negative outcomes. This habit increased her anxiety. One day she decided to interrupt this pattern. Whenever she noticed herself overthinking, she would stand up, move around, or engage in a simple task. This shift helped her break the cycle and regain control of her emotions. The science of emotions teaches a simple but powerful lesson. Reactions may be automatic, but they are not permanent. The brain is flexible and capable of change. With awareness, practice, and patience, a person can reshape how they respond to situations. By understanding how emotions are created and how they influence behavior, a person gains the ability to step back and choose a different path. Instead of being controlled by instinct, they can act with intention. Instead of being overwhelmed, they can remain steady. This knowledge is not just theoretical. It is practical and can be applied in everyday life. Every pause, every conscious breath, and every thoughtful response strengthens the ability to manage emotions. Over time, this becomes a natural way of living. As the journey continues, the next step is to identify the specific triggers that cause emotional reactions, because awareness of these triggers allows a person to prepare and respond more effectively. Recognizing emotional triggers. Every emotional reaction has a starting point, something that sparks the feeling and sets it into motion. These starting points are known as triggers. They can be situations, words, memories, or even small changes in environment that awaken a strong emotional response, often without warning. Many people go through life reacting again and again without ever understanding what is actually causing their emotions. This lack of awareness keeps them trapped in patterns that repeat over time. Recognizing emotional triggers is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, things that once felt confusing begin to make sense. Instead of feeling controlled by emotions, a person starts to see where they come from and why they appear. This awareness is the beginning of real control. Triggers are different for every person. What affects one individual deeply may not affect another at all. This is because triggers are shaped by personal experiences, beliefs, and past events. A simple comment can feel like an attack to one person, while another may not even notice it. The difference lies in the meaning attached to that comment. Consider the story of Farhan, who often felt anger when someone questioned his decisions. Even small suggestions from others would irritate him and lead to defensive reactions. He believed that people were trying to control him or prove him wrong. One day, he decided to reflect on this pattern. He realized that during his childhood, he was frequently criticized and rarely trusted to make his own choices. As a result, any form of questioning in his adult life triggered those old feelings of being judged and controlled. Once Farhan understood this connection, his perspective began to change. He started to see that not every question was an attack. Some were genuine attempts to help or understand. He practiced listening without reacting immediately, and over time, his anger reduced. His relationships improved because he was no longer responding based on past experiences, but on the present situation. This example shows that triggers are often rooted in history. They are not always about what is happening now, but about what has happened before. The mind connects similar situations and reacts as if the past is repeating itself. This is why some emotional reactions feel stronger than the situation seems to deserve. Another common trigger is rejection, or the fear of being ignored. Many people experience strong emotions when they feel left out, unappreciated, or unnoticed. These feelings can lead to sadness, withdrawal, or even anger. There is a young woman named Hina who felt hurt whenever her friends made plans without her. Even if it happened occasionally, she would assume that they did not value her. This assumption created distance in her relationships because she would stop communicating or respond coldly. One day, she decided to observe her reactions instead of acting on them. She realized that her feelings were not only about her friends, but also about a deeper fear of not being important. Hina began to challenge her thoughts. She reminded herself that people have different schedules and priorities, and that being left out once does not define her worth. She also started expressing her feelings calmly instead of withdrawing. Over time, her emotional responses became balanced, and her friendships grew stronger. Triggers can. A person may create emotional reactions through their own thinking patterns. Negative self-talk, constant comparison, or unrealistic expectations can act as triggers that generate stress, anxiety, or disappointment. Take the example of Usman, who constantly compared himself to others. He would feel discouraged whenever he saw someone achieving success. His trigger was not the success of others, but his own belief that he was falling behind. This belief created a cycle where he felt inadequate and lost motivation. Usman decided to shift his focus. He began setting personal goals based on his own progress rather than comparing himself to others. He celebrated small achievements and reminded himself that every journey is different. As his mindset changed, his emotional reactions also changed. He felt more motivated and less affected by the success of others. Recognizing triggers requires honesty. A person must be willing to look at their reactions without denial or excuses. It is easy to blame others or circumstances, but true growth comes from understanding one's own patterns. This does not mean that external situations are always perfect or fair, but it means taking responsibility for how one responds. One practical way to identify triggers is to observe repeated reactions. If a person notices that they often feel angry in similar situations or anxious in certain environments, this is a sign of a trigger. Writing these moments down can help create clarity over time. Patterns become visible and easier to understand. For example, a student named Ali noticed that he felt nervous every time he had to speak in front of others. Instead of avoiding the situation, he wrote down his thoughts and feelings. He realized that his fear was linked to a past experience where he made a mistake and felt embarrassed. This memory continued to influence his present reactions. Ali decided to face this trigger step by step. He practiced speaking in front of a mirror, then with a small group of friends. Gradually, he increased the level of challenge. Each positive experience helped weaken the trigger and build confidence. Triggers can also be linked to expectations. When reality does not match what a person expects, emotions arise. If someone expects constant appreciation, they may feel hurt when it is not given. If someone expects perfection, they may feel frustrated when mistakes happen. Managing these triggers involves adjusting expectations to be more realistic and flexible. This does not mean lowering standards, but understanding that life is unpredictable and not everything will go. There is also the role of environment. Certain places or people can act as triggers. If a person spends time in a negative or stressful environment, their emotional responses may become more intense. Being aware of this allows a person to make conscious choices about where they spend their time and who they interact with. A man named Zhang realized that he often felt drained and irritated after spending time with a particular group of people. Instead of ignoring this, he acknowledged that the environment was affecting his emotions. He began limiting his time in that setting and focused on building connections with people who supported his growth. This change had a positive impact on his emotional well-being. Recognizing triggers does not mean eliminating them completely. Some triggers may always exist, but their power can be reduced. The goal is not to avoid every difficult situation, but to build the ability to face them with awareness and control. When a trigger appears, there is a moment of choice. A person can react automatically or pause and respond consciously. This pause may be small, but it is powerful. It allows the thinking mind to step in and guide the response rather than letting the emotion take over. For instance, imagine receiving criticism that feels unfair. The initial reaction may be anger or defensiveness. But if you recognize this as a trigger, you can pause and ask yourself whether the reaction is coming from the present moment or from past experiences. This awareness creates space to respond calmly and constructively. Over time, this practice weakens the intensity of triggers. The same situation that once caused a strong reaction may no longer have the same effect. This is a sign of growth and increased emotional control. Understanding triggers is like understanding the roots of a tree. The visible reaction is only the surface, but the real cause lies beneath. By exploring these roots, a person gains deeper insight into themselves and their behavior. This awareness leads to freedom. Freedom from repeating the same mistakes, freedom from being controlled by automatic reactions, and freedom to choose a different path. Each trigger becomes an opportunity to learn and improve, rather than a force that controls life. Chapter 4. Mindfulness and Emotional Awareness. The ability to recognize emotions and triggers is powerful, but it becomes truly effective only when a person can stay present in the moment. This is where mindfulness becomes essential. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully aware of what is happening inside and around you without being lost in thoughts or overwhelmed by reactions. It is the skill that allows you to observe emotions instead of becoming controlled by them. Many people, their minds are either stuck in the past or worried about the future. They replay old situations or imagine outcomes that have not happened yet. In this state, emotions grow stronger because they are constantly fed by thoughts. Mindfulness breaks this cycle by bringing attention back to the present moment where real control exists. Imagine feeling anger during a conversation. Without mindfulness, the anger quickly takes over. Words are spoken without thought, and the situation escalates. With mindfulness, there is a moment of awareness. You notice the anger rising, you feel the tension in your body, and instead of reacting immediately, you pause. This pause creates space, and in that space, you have the ability to choose your response. Consider the story of Adil, who often lost control of his emotions during stressful situations. At work, whenever deadlines approached, he would feel overwhelmed. His thoughts would race, and he would become irritated with his team. This behavior affected both his performance and his relationships. One day, Adil was introduced to the idea of mindfulness. At first, he did not believe that simply being aware could make a difference, but he decided to try. He began with a simple practice each morning, sitting quietly and focusing on his breathing. He noticed how his mind would wander, and instead of forcing it back, he gently brought his attention to the present. As days passed, he started applying this awareness during his work. When stress began to rise, he would pause and take a few. He noticed the tension in his body and allowed it to settle before speaking or acting. Gradually, his reactions changed. He became calmer, more focused, and more effective in handling pressure. This transformation did not happen instantly. It required consistency and patience, but it showed that mindfulness is not just a concept. It is a practical tool that can reshape how a person experiences life. Mindfulness does not mean eliminating thoughts or emotions. It means observing them without judgment. When a person judges their emotions by labeling them as bad or wrong, they create resistance. This resistance often makes the emotion stronger. Instead, mindfulness encourages acceptance. Recognizing that emotions are temporary experiences allows them to pass more easily. For example, a student named Rabia often felt anxious before exams. She would think about failing, and her mind would create worst-case scenarios. This anxiety made it difficult for her to focus on studying. When she learned mindfulness, she began to observe her anxiety instead of fighting it. She noticed how it felt in her body and how her thoughts changed during those moments. Instead of trying to push the anxiety away, she accepted it as a natural response to pressure. This acceptance reduced its intensity. She was able to study with more focus and approach her exams with a clearer mind. Her performance improved, not because the anxiety disappeared completely, but because she learned how to manage it. Another important aspect of mindfulness is awareness of the body. Emotions are not only mental experiences, they are also physical. Sensations such as a tight chest, fast heartbeat, or tense muscles are signs that an emotion is present. By paying attention to these signals, a person can recognize emotions earlier before they become overwhelming. Take the example of Salman, who often became angry without realizing it until it was too late. He started practicing body awareness. Throughout the day, he would check in with himself, noticing any tension or discomfort. One day, during a meeting, he felt his jaw tightening and his shoulders becoming stiff. He recognized this as the beginning of anger. Instead of reacting, he relaxed his body and took a deep breath. This small action prevented the anger from growing and allowed him to stay calm. This shows that awareness of the body can act as an early warning system. It gives a person the chance to respond before emotions take full control. Mindfulness also helps in breaking the habit of overthinking. Many emotional struggles are not caused by actual events, but by repeated thinking about those events. The mind creates stories, adds meaning, and often exaggerates situations. This process can turn a small issue into a large emotional burden. A young man named Fahad often replayed conversations in his mind, analyzing every word and imagining different outcomes. This habit created stress and confusion. When he practiced mindfulness, he learned to notice. He learned to notice when his mind started drifting into overthinking. Instead of following those thoughts, he brought his attention back to the present moment. He focused on what he was doing, whether it was working, eating, or walking. This shift reduced the power of his thoughts and allowed his mind to become calmer. Over time, he experienced less stress and greater clarity in his decisions. Practicing mindfulness does not require special conditions. It can be done anywhere at any time. It can be as simple as paying attention to your breath, feeling your steps as you walk, or listening fully during a conversation. The key is to be present rather than distracted. There is also the practice of mindful response. This means choosing actions with awareness rather than reacting automatically. When an emotion arises, instead of acting immediately, a person can pause, observe, and then decide what response. This creates a sense of control and reduces impulsive behavior. For instance, imagine receiving a message that feels offensive. The immediate reaction may be anger and the urge to respond quickly. With mindfulness, you notice the emotion and delay your response. You give yourself time to think, and when you do respond, it is calm and thoughtful. This prevents unnecessary conflict and leads to better outcomes. Mindfulness strengthens emotional awareness over time. The more a person practices, the easier it becomes to recognize emotions as they arise. This awareness creates a gap between feeling and action, and within that gap lies the power to choose. It is important to understand that mindfulness is not about perfection. There will be moments when emotions take over and reactions happen. This is part of the process. What matters is returning to awareness, learning from those moments, and continuing to practice. Each moment of awareness is a step forward. Each pause before reaction is a sign of growth. With time, these small changes build a strong foundation of emotional control. Mindfulness also brings a sense of balance. It allows a person to experience emotions fully without being overwhelmed. Joy can be appreciated without attachment. Sadness can be felt without despair, and anger can be understood without destruction. This balance creates stability and clarity in life. Chapter 5. Learning to control emotional responses. Awareness is the beginning of control, but true change happens when a person learns how to respond differently in real situations. Emotions will The goal is not to stop feeling, but to guide those feelings into actions that create better outcomes. This is the stage where knowledge becomes practice, and practice becomes transformation. Controlling emotional responses does not mean forcing yourself to stay calm in every situation or pretending that nothing affects you. It means recognizing the emotion, allowing it to exist, and then choosing a response that aligns with your long-term goals rather than your immediate impulse. This requires discipline, patience, and consistent effort. Imagine a moment where someone speaks harshly to you. The first reaction may be anger. The mind may quickly generate thoughts of defending yourself or responding with equal intensity. In the past, this might have led to conflict. But now there is awareness, and with awareness comes a choice. You can pause, take a breath, and decide how you want to respond. Instead of reacting, you respond with calm words or even silence. This changes the direction of the situation completely. There is a man named Cameron who struggled with controlling his anger at home. Small disagreements would turn into arguments because he reacted immediately without thinking. His family began to feel uncomfortable around him, and this created distance in his relationships. Cameron realized that something needed to change. He started practicing a simple rule. Whenever he felt anger rising, he would pause and take a few slow breaths before speaking. At first, this felt difficult because the urge to react was strong. But he continued practicing even when he made mistakes. One day during a disagreement, he felt the familiar surge of anger. Instead of raising his voice, he stayed silent for a moment and focused on his breathing. This pause allowed his mind to calm down. When he finally spoke, his words were measured and respectful. The situation did not escalate, and for the first time he felt a sense of control. This small change had a powerful impact. Over time, his relationships improved because he was no longer reacting impulsively. His family felt more comfortable and communication became easier. This example shows that control is built through simple, consistent actions. One of the most effective techniques is the pause. The pause creates distance between emotion and action. It gives the mind time to catch up with the feeling and make a conscious decision. Another important technique is reframing. Reframing means changing the way you interpret a situation. Instead of seeing an event in a negative or threatening way, you look at it from a different perspective that is more balanced and constructive. Consider the story of Nadia, who felt frustrated whenever she faced delays in her plans. Traffic, long lines, or unexpected changes would immediately affect her mood. She would feel irritated and impatient, which made the experience even more stressful. Nadia decided to practice reframing. Whenever she faced a delay, she reminded herself that this was an opportunity to slow down and use the time differently. She listened to something meaningful, reflected on her day, or simply relaxed. This shift in perspective changed her emotional response. The same situations that once caused frustration became moments of calm. Reframing does not mean ignoring problems. It means choosing a perspective that helps you respond effectively rather than react negatively. Another powerful tool is emotional labeling. This involves naming the emotion you are experiencing. When you identify the emotion clearly, it becomes easier to manage. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by a mix of sensations, you understand what you are dealing with. For example, instead of saying, "I feel bad," you can say, "I feel frustrated," or "I feel anxious." This clarity helps the mind process the emotion and reduces its intensity. It also makes it easier to choose an appropriate response. A student named Haris used this technique when he felt nervous before presentations. Instead of trying to ignore his feelings, he acknowledged them by saying to himself, "I am feeling nervous right now." This simple act reduced his fear and allowed him to focus on his task. Physical regulation is another essential part of controlling emotional responses. The body and mind are connected, and calming the body can help calm the mind. Techniques such as deep breathing, slow movement, or stepping away from a situation can reduce the intensity of emotions. Take the example of Saba, who often felt overwhelmed during stressful situations. Her heart would race, and her thoughts would become scattered. She learned a breathing technique where she inhaled, slowly held her breath for a few seconds, and then exhaled gently. She practiced this whenever she felt overwhelmed. This technique helped her regain control of her body, which in turn allowed her mind to become clearer. She was able to handle challenges with greater confidence and stability. Consistency is key. In this process, emotional control is not developed overnight. It requires repeated practice in different situations. Each time a person chooses to respond consciously, instead of reacting automatically, they strengthen their ability to control emotions. There will be moments of failure where emotions take over and reactions happen impulsively. These moments should not be seen as setbacks, but as opportunities to learn. Reflecting on what happened and how it could be handled differently next time is part of the growth process. There is a man named Tariq who is working on controlling his impatience. One day he lost his temper in a situation that he had been trying to manage. Instead of feeling defeated, he took time to reflect. He asked himself what triggered his reaction and what he could do differently next time. This reflection helped him improve, and he continued practicing. Over time, Tariq noticed that his reactions became less intense and more controlled. The same situations that once caused frustration no longer had the same effect. Another important aspect of controlling emotional responses is setting boundaries. Sometimes emotions are triggered by situations or people that repeatedly create stress. Learning to set clear boundaries protects emotional well-being and reduces unnecessary triggers. For example, a person who constantly agrees to requests despite feeling overwhelmed may experience frustration and exhaustion. By learning to say no in a respectful way, they can reduce this emotional burden and maintain balance. There is also the role of intention. When a person has a clear intention for how they want to respond in certain situations, it becomes easier to act accordingly. For example, deciding in advance to remain calm during disagreements or to listen fully before responding creates a guideline for behavior. A woman named Mehak set an intention to respond with patience in her daily interactions. Whenever she felt irritation, she reminded herself of this intention. This simple reminder helped her stay aligned with her goal and gradually changed her responses. Controlling emotional responses is not about suppressing feelings, but about guiding them. Emotions provide valuable information, but they do not have to control actions. By combining awareness techniques and consistent practice, a person can create a balanced approach to handling emotions. This process leads to greater confidence because a person begins to trust their ability to handle situations effectively. They no longer feel at the mercy of their emotions, but in control of their responses. Chapter 6. Building Emotional Discipline. Controlling emotions in single moments is important, but true transformation comes from developing discipline that lasts over time. Emotional discipline is the ability to remain consistent in how you respond regardless of changing situations, moods, or pressures. It is the foundation that allows a person to stay steady even when life becomes unpredictable. Discipline in emotions is not something that appears suddenly. It is built slowly through repeated choices. Every time a person chooses patience over anger, calmness over panic, or understanding over reaction, they strengthen. This discipline, just like physical strength, grows with repeated exercise. Emotional strength grows with repeated control. Imagine a person who decides to remain calm during difficult situations. At first, this may feel challenging because old habits are strong. The mind is used to reacting quickly, and the body follows those patterns. But with practice, each controlled response becomes easier and more natural. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes a normal way of living. There is a man named Rashid who struggled with impatience. He wanted everything to happen quickly and became frustrated when things did not go according to his expectations. This impatience affected his work and relationships because he often reacted without thinking. Rashid decided to build emotional discipline by focusing on small daily actions. Whenever he felt impatience, he reminded himself to slow down. He practiced waiting without reacting even in simple situations, like standing in line or dealing with delays. At first, these moments felt uncomfortable, but he stayed committed. Over time, Rashid noticed a change. His tolerance increased, and his reactions became less intense. Situations that once triggered frustration no longer had the same effect. He realized that discipline was not about controlling one big moment, but about managing many small moments consistently. This shows that emotional discipline is developed through everyday practice. It is not only for major challenges, but also for ordinary situations where habits are formed. Another important part of discipline is consistency. Many people try to control their emotions only when situations become serious, but ignore the smaller moments where discipline could be practiced. True control comes from being consistent in both small and large situations. Consider the story of Amina, who wanted to improve her emotional control. She noticed that she was calm in important situations, but easily irritated by small inconveniences like noise interruptions or minor mistakes. She realized that these small reactions were weakening her overall discipline. Amina began to treat every situation as an opportunity to practice control. Whether it was a small inconvenience or a major challenge, she responded with awareness and patience. This consistent effort strengthened her discipline and made it easier to handle bigger situations with stability. Emotional discipline also requires self-control in thoughts, not just actions. Thoughts are the starting point of emotions, and if they are not managed, they can quickly lead to strong reactions. A disciplined mind learns to guide thoughts in a constructive direction. For example, a person who constantly thinks negatively about a situation will naturally feel negative emotions. A disciplined approach involves recognizing these thoughts and replacing them with balanced and realistic perspectives. This does not mean ignoring problems, but it means not allowing thoughts to create unnecessary emotional intensity. There is a young man named Bilal who often assumed the worst in every situation. If someone did not respond to him quickly, he would think something was wrong. This pattern created anxiety and stress. Bilal decided to train his mind. Whenever he noticed negative assumptions, he challenged them. He asked himself whether there was real evidence or if his mind was creating unnecessary worry. Over time, his thinking became more balanced and his emotions followed the same path. Another key aspect of emotional discipline is delayed reaction. This means not acting immediately on emotions, but giving yourself time to think clearly before responding. Many mistakes happen because of instant reactions that are not fully considered. Take the example of Saad, who once sent messages in anger during disagreements. These messages often created more conflict and regret. Later, he decided to apply delayed reaction. Whenever he felt strong emotions, he waited before responding. He allowed himself time to calm down and think about the situation. This simple change had a powerful effect. His communication improved and conflicts reduced because his responses were thoughtful rather than impulsive. Emotional discipline also involves setting personal standards. These standards act as guidelines for how you want to behave, regardless of circumstances. For example, deciding that you will not raise your voice during disagreements, or that you will listen fully before responding, creates a clear direction for your actions. A woman named Huma set a personal standard for herself. She decided that no matter how stressful a situation became, she would speak respectfully. This standard became a part of her behavior and guided her responses. Even when she felt strong emotions, she stayed aligned with her principle. Having clear standards reduces confusion in emotional situations. It provides a reference point that helps maintain control even when emotions are intense. Another important element of discipline is resilience. Resilience is the ability to recover quickly from emotional setbacks. Even with strong discipline, there will be moments where emotions take over. The key is not to stay stuck in those moments, but to return to control as soon as possible. Consider the story of Imshiz, who was working on controlling his anger. One day, he lost his temper in a situation that he had been managing well. Instead of giving up, he reflected on what happened. He understood his mistake and continued practicing. This ability to recover and continue is what strengthened his discipline. Resilience ensures that progress is not lost due to occasional setbacks. It allows a person to keep moving forward despite challenges. Emotional discipline also benefits from routine. Creating daily habits that support calmness and focus strengthens the ability to manage emotions. Practices such as taking time for reflection, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and staying organized contribute to a balanced emotional state. For example, a person who starts the day with a clear plan and a calm mindset is more likely to handle situations effectively compared to someone who begins the day in a rushed and unprepared state. Small habits create a stable foundation for emotional control. There is also the role of self-accountability. Taking responsibility for your reactions, rather than blaming others, is essential for discipline. When a person accepts that their response is their own choice, they gain the power to change it. A man named Zubair often blamed others for his frustration. He believed that people and situations were the cause of his emotions. One day he realized that while he could not control everything around him, he could control how he responded. This shift in perspective allowed him to take responsibility and work on his reactions. Self-accountability creates a sense of ownership and encourages continuous improvement. It turns challenges into opportunities for growth rather than sources of frustration. Building emotional discipline is a long-term process. It requires patience, persistence, and a willingness to learn. There will be moments of success and moments of difficulty, but each experience contributes to growth. Over time, discipline becomes a natural part of life. Emotions no longer feel overwhelming because they are guided by awareness and control. A person becomes steady, confident, and capable of handling different situations with clarity. This discipline not only improves personal well-being, but also strengthens relationships, decision-making, and overall success. It creates a sense of stability that allows a person to move forward with purpose, rather than being influenced by temporary feelings. Chapter 7: Emotions and Decision-Making. Every decision a person makes carries the influence of emotions, whether it is recognized or not. From small daily choices to major life turning points, emotions play a powerful role in shaping direction. The challenge is not that emotions exist in decision-making, but that they often take control without awareness. When this happens, decisions become impulsive, short-sighted, and sometimes harmful. Understanding how emotions affect decisions is essential for gaining control of life. A decision made in anger, fear, excitement, or sadness may feel right in the moment, but may not align with long-term goals. Emotions focus on the present feeling, while wise decisions consider the future consequences. Imagine a situation where a person feels frustrated at work. After a difficult day, they consider quitting immediately. The emotion of frustration creates a sense of urgency, and the mind looks for quick relief. In that moment, leaving the job feels but if the decision is delayed and the emotion settles, the person may realize that there are better solutions, such as addressing the issue, improving skills, or exploring opportunities with a clear plan. There is a man named Fahim who faced a similar situation. He experienced repeated stress at his workplace and felt unappreciated. One day, after a heated interaction, he decided to resign immediately. His decision was driven by anger and disappointment. After leaving his job, he faced financial pressure and uncertainty, which made him realize that his decision had been rushed. Fahim later understood that his emotion was valid, but his action was not well considered. If he had given himself time to think, he could have made a more balanced decision. He could have planned his next step before leaving, or tried to resolve the issue calmly. This example shows that emotions can create urgency, pushing a person to act quickly without thinking deeply. One of the most important skills in decision-making is the ability to delay action until emotions settle. This delay creates space for clarity and rational thinking. Another way emotions influence decisions is by narrowing focus. When a person is overwhelmed by a strong feeling, they tend to see only one side of the situation. Fear may make everything seem risky. Anger may make everything seem unfair, and excitement may hide potential problems. This limited perspective can lead to poor choices. Consider the story of Sana, who was offered a business opportunity that seemed exciting. The idea of quick success filled her with enthusiasm. Without analyzing the details, she invested her savings. The excitement prevented her from seeing potential risks and asking important questions. Later, she faced losses and realized that her decision had been influenced by emotion rather than careful thinking. Sane learned an important lesson. She began to approach decisions with balance. When she felt excitement, she reminded herself to slow down and evaluate the situation logically. She looked at both benefits and risks before making a choice. This approach helped her make better decisions in the future. Emotions also affect decision-making through fear. Fear can prevent action and hold a person back from opportunities. It creates doubt and makes challenges appear larger than they are. While fear can be useful in protecting from real danger, it can also limit growth when it is not understood properly. Take the example of Hamza, who had the opportunity to start his own project, but felt afraid of failure. His fear created hesitation, and he delayed his decision repeatedly. Over time, the opportunity passed, and he was left with regret. Hamza realized that his fear was not based on immediate danger, but on uncertainty. He decided to change his approach. Instead of avoiding decisions due to fear, he began to analyze what he could learn and how he could prepare. He started taking small steps toward his goals, despite feeling uncomfortable. This shift allowed him to move forward and make decisions based on growth rather than fear. He understood that waiting for fear to disappear completely was not realistic, but acting with awareness despite fear was possible. Another emotional influence in decision-making is attachment. People often make choices based on comfort and familiarity rather than what is truly beneficial. They may stay in situations that no longer serve them because they feel emotionally attached. A woman named Nala remained in a situation that was not helping her grow because she felt comfortable and afraid of change. Her attachment created resistance to making a new decision. Even though she knew that change was necessary, her emotions held her back. Naila eventually realized that comfort does not always mean progress. She decided to focus on her long-term goals rather than her immediate feelings. This helped her make a decision that was difficult at first, but beneficial in the long run. To improve decision-making, it is important to create a balance between emotion and logic. Emotions provide valuable information, but they should not be the only factor in making choices. A balanced approach involves understanding the emotion and then using rational thinking to evaluate the situation. One effective method is to ask simple questions before making a decision. What am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this way? What are the possible outcomes of this decision? Will this choice benefit me in the long term? These questions create awareness and encourage thoughtful decision-making. There is also the importance of perspective. Looking at a situation from different angles helps reduce emotional bias. Seeking advice from trusted individuals can provide clarity and prevent impulsive decisions. A young man named Junaid often made quick decisions based on his feelings. He later started discussing important choices with a mentor. This practice helped him see situations more clearly and consider options he had not thought about before his decisions became more stable and effective. Another key factor is patience. Good decisions often require time. Rushing increases the influence of emotions, while patience allows clarity to develop. Taking time does not mean avoiding decisions, but making them with awareness and preparation. There are moments when quick decisions are necessary, but even in those situations, a trained mind can remain calm and focused. Emotional discipline, developed over time, helps a person respond effectively even under pressure. Decision-making also improves when a person is clear about their values. Values act as a guide and help align choices with what truly matters. When decisions are based on values rather than temporary emotions, they lead to more consistent and meaningful outcomes. For example, a person who values honesty will choose truth even in difficult situations, while someone who values growth will choose opportunities that challenge them. These values create stability in decision-making and reduce confusion caused by emotions. Understanding the connection between emotions and decisions is a powerful step toward control. It allows a person to recognize when emotions are influencing their choices and to take a step back before acting. Over time, this awareness leads to better decisions, fewer regrets, and a stronger sense of direction. A person becomes more confident because they trust their ability to think clearly and act wisely. Chapter 8: Emotional Control in Relationships. Relationships are one of the most important parts of human life, and they are deeply influenced by emotions. Every interaction, every conversation, and every reaction carries emotional energy. When emotions are not controlled, relationships become unstable, filled with misunderstandings, conflict, and distance. When emotions are guided with awareness, relationships become stronger, more respectful, and more meaningful. Many people believe that problems in relationships are caused by others, but in reality, a large part of conflict comes from how emotions are handled. A simple misunderstanding can turn into a major argument if reactions are immediate and uncontrolled. Words spoken in anger can create wounds that take a long time to heal, while a calm response can prevent unnecessary damage. Imagine a situation where two people disagree. Without emotional control, the disagreement quickly turns into an argument. Each person tries to defend their position. Voices become louder, and the focus shifts from solving the problem to proving who is right. In this state, emotions take over, and the relationship suffers. Now imagine the same situation with emotional awareness. One person feels the rise of anger, but chooses to stay calm. They listen carefully and respond with respect. The conversation remains controlled, and the problem is addressed without damaging the relationship. This difference comes from emotional control. There is a man named Adnan who often struggled in his relationships because of his reactions. Whenever he felt hurt or misunderstood, he would respond with anger. His intention was to defend himself, but his reactions created more conflict and pushed people away. One day, Adnan realized he decided to change how he responded in difficult situations. Instead of reacting immediately, he practiced listening without interruption. He allowed the other person to express their thoughts fully before responding. At first, this was difficult because his emotions were strong, but he stayed committed. Over time, he noticed a change. People became more open with him, and conflicts reduced. His relationships improved because he replaced reaction with understanding. This example shows that emotional control is not about winning arguments, but about maintaining connection. When a person focuses on understanding rather than reacting, they create space for healthy communication. Another important aspect of relationships is empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. Without empathy, a person may respond only based on their own emotions, ignoring the perspective of others. This can create distance and misunderstanding. Consider the story of Aisha, who often felt frustrated with her friend during conversations. She believed that her friend was not listening to her, which made her feel ignored. As a result, she would respond with irritation. One day, Aisha decided to look at the situation differently. She tried to understand her friend's perspective. She realized that her friend was dealing with personal challenges and was not intentionally ignoring her. This understanding changed her emotional response. Instead of reacting with frustration, she responded with patience and support. This shift strengthened their relationship because empathy replaced assumption. Emotional control also helps in managing expectations within relationships. Many conflicts arise when expectations are not met. A person may expect constant attention, appreciation, or agreement, and when these expectations are not fulfilled, they feel hurt or disappointed. A young man named Bilal expected his partner to always understand his feelings without explanation. When this did not happen, he felt upset and reacted emotionally. This created confusion and tension in the relationship. Bilal learned that clear communication is more effective than silent expectations. He began expressing his thoughts calmly, instead of assuming that others would understand automatically. This change reduced misunderstandings and improved the quality of his relationship. Another key element is patience. Relationships require time and understanding. Emotions can create urgency, pushing a person to demand immediate answers or reactions, but patience allows situations to unfold naturally and reduces pressure. Take the example of Hina, who often felt anxious when she did not receive immediate responses to her messages. She would assume negative things and react emotionally. This behavior created stress for both her and the other person. Hina decided to practice patience. She reminded herself that people have different schedules and responsibilities. She gave space instead of reacting instantly. This small change brought calmness to her interactions and improved her relationships. Emotional control also involves managing conflict effectively. Conflict is a natural part of relationships, but how it is handled determines its impact. Uncontrolled emotions turn conflict into damage, while controlled responses turn conflict into growth. There is a story of two colleagues, Usman and Saad, who often disagreed on work decisions. Their discussions used to become arguments because both reacted emotionally. One day, they decided to change their approach. They agreed to listen fully before responding and to focus on solutions rather than personal opinions. This agreement changed their interactions. Their discussions became productive and respectful. They were able to resolve issues without harming their professional relationship. This example shows that emotional discipline can transform conflict into cooperation. Another important factor is forgiveness. Holding on to anger, resentment, or past mistakes creates emotional burden and affects relationships negatively. Forgiveness does not mean ignoring what happened, but releasing the emotional weight attached to it. A woman named Mehak struggled with letting go of past conflicts. She often brought up old issues during new disagreements, which kept the cycle of conflict alive. When she decided to practice forgiveness, she focused on moving forward instead of holding on to the past. This reduced tension and created a healthier environment in her relationships. Emotional control also helps in setting boundaries. Healthy relationships require clear boundaries that protect emotional well-being. Without boundaries, a person may feel overwhelmed or taken for granted. For example, a person who always agrees to everything may feel exhausted and frustrated. Setting boundaries allows them to express their limits calmly and respectfully. This reduces negative emotions and creates balance in the relationship. There is also the importance of self-awareness. Understanding your own emotions helps you communicate them effectively. Instead of reacting impulsively, a person can express their feelings in a clear and controlled way. For instance, instead of reacting with anger, a person can say that they feel hurt or misunderstood. This approach encourages understanding rather than conflict. Relationships are not about avoiding emotions, but about managing them in a way that strengthens connection. Emotional control creates trust, respect, and stability. It allows people to communicate openly, resolve conflicts peacefully, and support each other effectively. Over time, this approach leads to deeper and more meaningful relationships. A person becomes someone who is reliable, calm, and understanding, which attracts positive connections and reduces unnecessary conflict. Chapter 9. Handling negative emotions. Negative emotions, such as anger, fear, anxiety, and sadness, are often seen as problems that need to be removed. But in reality, they are natural parts of human experience. They carry messages about what is happening inside and around a person. The challenge is not their presence, but how they are handled. When negative emotions are ignored or allowed to take control, they can lead to poor decisions, damaged relationships, and inner conflict. When they are understood and managed, they become sources of strength and awareness. Many people try to escape negative emotions by distracting themselves or suppressing what they feel. This may provide temporary relief, but the emotion does not disappear. It remains beneath the surface and often returns with greater intensity. True control comes from facing these emotions with awareness and guiding them in a healthy direction. Consider the emotion of anger. Anger often arises when something feels unfair or when expectations are not met. It creates a strong urge to react immediately, but this reaction is not always helpful. There is a man named Javed who struggled with anger in his daily life. Small inconveniences would trigger strong reactions. He realized that his anger was not just about the present situation, but also about accumulated frustration. Javed decided to change his approach. Instead of reacting immediately, he began to pause whenever he felt anger rising. He focused on his breathing and allowed the intensity to reduce before speaking. He also started identifying the real cause of his anger, whether it was stress, unmet expectations, or misunderstanding. Over time, his anger became less intense and more manageable. He learned that anger itself was not the problem, but uncontrolled reaction was. Fear is another powerful negative emotion. It is designed to protect, but it can also limit growth when it becomes excessive. Fear often appears in situations involving uncertainty or risk, and can prevent a person from taking necessary steps forward. Take the example of Saima, who avoided new opportunities because she feared failure. This fear kept her in a comfort zone, but also prevented her from growing. She realized that her fear was based on imagined outcomes rather than actual danger. Saima began to face her fear gradually. She took small steps outside her comfort zone and allowed herself to experience discomfort. Each step reduced the intensity of her fear and increased her confidence. She learned that fear does not need to disappear before action. It can be managed while moving forward. Anxiety is closely related to fear, but often involves constant worry about future events. It creates a cycle where the mind continuously thinks about what could go wrong. This can be exhausting and overwhelming. A young man named Faraz experienced anxiety before important events. He would imagine negative outcomes and feel stressed long before anything happened. To manage this, he started focusing on what he could control instead of what he could not. He prepared himself for situations and practiced staying present. Whenever his mind drifted toward worry, he brought his attention back to the present moment. This reduced his anxiety and allowed him to handle situations with greater calmness. Sadness is another emotion that people often struggle with. It can arise from lost disappointment or unmet expectations. While it may feel heavy, it also provides an opportunity for reflection and healing. There is a woman named Noreen who felt deep sadness after facing a personal setback. Instead of ignoring her feelings, she allowed herself to experience them fully. She took time to reflect, understand her emotions, and gradually find ways to move forward. Through this process, she gained insight into herself and developed resilience. Her sadness became a step toward growth rather than a permanent state. Handling negative emotions effectively involves several key approaches. One of the most important is acceptance. Accepting emotions does not mean agreeing with them or allowing them to control behavior. It means recognizing their presence without resistance. This reduces their intensity and allows them to pass more naturally. Another important approach is expression. Emotions need to be expressed in a healthy way. Keeping them inside can create pressure, while expressing them calmly can bring relief. This can be done through conversation writing or other constructive activities. For example, a person who feels frustrated can talk about their feelings in a respectful way instead of reacting aggressively. This creates understanding and reduces emotional tension. Physical activity is also helpful in managing negative emotions. Movement can release built-up energy and improve overall emotional state. Simple actions like walking or stretching can make a noticeable difference. There is also the role of perspective. Changing the way a situation is viewed can alter the emotional response. A challenge can be seen as an opportunity to learn rather than a problem to avoid. This shift reduces negative intensity and creates a more balanced approach. Another important factor is patience. Negative emotions do not disappear instantly. They require time to process and settle. Being patient with yourself during this process is essential for maintaining control. A man named Imran learned this when dealing with stress. He used to expect immediate relief from his emotions and became frustrated when that did not happen. Over time, he understood that emotions have a natural cycle and require time to pass. This understanding helped him remain calm. It is also important to avoid over-identification with negative emotions. A person is not defined by what they feel. Experiencing anger does not make someone an angry person, and feeling fear does not make someone weak. Recognizing this separation helps maintain a sense of identity and control. For example, a person can say, "I am feeling anxious," rather than "I am anxious." This small change in language creates distance between the person and the emotion, making it easier to manage. Handling negative emotions is not about eliminating them, but about learning how to navigate them with awareness and control. Each emotion carries a message, and when understood correctly, it can guide a person toward better decisions and growth. Over time, this approach creates emotional balance. A person becomes less reactive, more thoughtful, and more capable of handling challenges with stability. Negative emotions lose their power to control behavior, and instead become tools for learning and improvement. Chapter 10. Using positive emotions wisely. Positive emotions, such as happiness, excitement, confidence, and satisfaction, bring energy, motivation, and a sense of fulfillment. They make life enjoyable and encourage progress. However, just like negative emotions, they can also influence decisions and behavior in ways that are not always beneficial when they are not managed properly. Many people assume that positive emotions always lead to good outcomes, but without awareness, they can create overconfidence, impulsive actions, and unrealistic expectations. Understanding how to use positive emotions wisely is an important part of taking control of life. It is about enjoying these emotions while maintaining balance and clarity so that they support growth rather than lead to mistakes. Happiness is one of the most desired emotions. It creates a sense of ease and contentment. However, when happiness leads to carelessness, it can reduce focus and discipline. Consider the story of Asad, who achieved success in his studies. After reaching his goal, he felt extremely happy and relaxed. This happiness caused him to reduce his effort because he believed that he had already proven himself. Over time, his performance declined because he became less disciplined. Asad realized that while happiness was valuable, it needed to be balanced with responsibility. He learned to enjoy his achievements while continuing to work toward new goals. This balance allowed him to maintain progress without losing the joy of success. Excitement is another powerful positive emotion. It creates enthusiasm and encourages action, but it can also lead to impulsive decisions when not controlled. There is a young woman named Komal who felt excited about a new opportunity. She quickly made a commitment without fully understanding the details. Her excitement made everything seem perfect, and she ignored potential challenges. Later, she faced difficulties that could have been avoided with careful planning. Komal learned that excitement should be combined with thoughtful analysis. She began to pause and evaluate situations, even when she felt enthusiastic. This approach allowed her to make decisions that were both positive and practical. Confidence is essential for growth and success. It allows a person to take action, face challenges, and believe in their abilities. However, when confidence turns into overconfidence, it can create problems. Overconfidence may lead a person to ignore risks, underestimate challenges, and make careless decisions. Take the example of Hamid, who developed strong confidence in his skills. After a series of successes, he began to believe that he could handle any situation without preparation. This mindset caused him to overlook important details, and he eventually faced setbacks. Hamid realized that true confidence is not about ignoring preparation, but about combining belief in oneself with continuous effort. He adjusted his approach by staying confident while remaining disciplined and attentive. This balance helped him achieve better results. Satisfaction is another positive emotion that can influence behavior. Feeling satisfied with achievements brings a sense of peace, but it can also reduce motivation if it leads to complacency. A man named Tariq reached a stable position in his career and felt satisfied with his progress. This satisfaction made him less interested in improving his skills. Over time, he noticed that others were advancing while he remained at the same level. Tariq understood that satisfaction should not stop growth. He began setting new goals and challenging himself while still appreciating what he had achieved. This allowed him to continue progressing without losing his sense of contentment. Using positive emotions wisely involves maintaining awareness even in moments of joy. It requires a balance between feeling good and staying grounded. This balance ensures that emotions support long-term success rather than create short-term distractions. One effective approach is reflection. Taking time to reflect on positive experiences helps maintain perspective. Instead of becoming lost in the emotion, a person can think about what led to the success and how it can be continued. For example, after achieving a goal, a person can ask what actions contributed to this result and how these actions can be repeated or improved. This reflection turns positive emotions into a source of learning rather than just temporary pleasure. Another important aspect is gratitude. Gratitude strengthens positive emotions while keeping them balanced. It allows a person to appreciate what they have without becoming dependent on constant success or external validation. A woman named Syra practiced gratitude by regularly acknowledging the positive aspects of her life. This practice helped her stay grounded even during moments of success. She remained focused and humble, which allowed her to maintain strong relationships and steady progress. There is also the role of self-control. Positive emotions can create a desire for immediate enjoyment, which may lead to decisions that are not beneficial in the long term. Practicing self-control ensures that enjoyment does not come at the cost of future goals. For instance, a person who feels excited about earning money may be tempted to spend it impulsively. Self-control helps in making balanced decisions where enjoyment and responsibility coexist. Another key factor is awareness of emotional shifts. Positive emotions can change quickly, and if a person becomes too attached to them, they may struggle when those feelings fade. Understanding that emotions are temporary helps maintain stability. A young man named Imad experienced this when he felt extremely motivated at the start of a new project. His enthusiasm was high, but over time the excitement reduced and he found it difficult to stay consistent. He realized that relying only on motivation was not enough. Imad began to build discipline alongside his positive emotions. He continued working even when the initial excitement faded. This approach helped him complete his projects successfully. Positive emotions are valuable because they provide energy and direction. They encourage creativity, strengthen relationships, and improve overall well-being. When managed properly, they become powerful tools for growth. However, the key is balance. Enjoying positive emotions while staying aware and disciplined ensures that they lead to constructive outcomes. A person who masters this balance can experience joy without losing focus, confidence without becoming careless, and satisfaction without becoming stagnant. Over time, this understanding creates a stable and positive mindset where emotions support rather than control behavior. Life becomes more balanced and decisions become more thoughtful. Conclusion. The journey of understanding and controlling emotions is not a short path, but a continuous process that shapes every part of life. From the moment a person becomes aware of their emotions to the point where they can guide them with discipline, the transformation is deep and lasting. It is not about becoming emotionless, but about becoming stronger than the impulses that once controlled behavior. Throughout this journey, one truth becomes clear. Emotions are powerful, but they are not in control unless a person allows them to be. They rise naturally in response to situations, but they do not have the authority to decide actions. That authority belongs to the individual who is willing to pause, observe, and choose wisely. Many people live without this awareness, reacting instantly to anger, fear, excitement, or sadness, and then facing the consequences of those reactions. This creates a cycle where life feels unpredictable and difficult to manage. Breaking this cycle begins with understanding that there is always a moment of choice, even if it feels small. In that moment lies the power to respond differently. Taking control of life requires more than knowledge. It requires practice, consistency, and patience. There will be moments where emotions take over and mistakes happen, But these moments are not failures. They are lessons. Each experience provides an opportunity to learn and improve. Over time, these small improvements create a strong foundation of emotional discipline. The ability to manage emotions influences every area of life. It shapes decisions, relationships, personal growth, and overall well-being. A person who can remain calm in difficult situations, think clearly under pressure, and respond. This control creates confidence, because the person knows they are not at the mercy of their emotions. It is also important to understand that control does not mean suppression. Emotions are not enemies to be removed. They are signals to be understood. When a person listens to these signals without being controlled by them, they gain insight into themselves and their environment. This insight leads to better decisions and deeper self-awareness. Balance is the key. Emotions provide energy and meaning, while discipline provides direction. Without emotions, life becomes empty and disconnected. But without discipline, life becomes chaotic and unstable. The combination of both creates strength, clarity, and growth. Every step in this journey matters. Every moment of awareness, every pause before reaction, and every thoughtful decision adds to the process. Over time, these actions become habits, and these habits shape character. A person who consistently chooses control over impulse becomes someone who can handle challenges with stability and confidence. Life will always present situations that test emotional control. There will be moments of pressure, conflict, and uncertainty. These moments are not obstacles, but opportunities to apply what has been learned. Each challenge strengthens the ability to remain steady and make wise choices. The path to mastering emotions is also the path to mastering life. It is a journey of self-discovery, growth, and transformation. It requires effort, but the rewards are lasting. A person who takes control of their emotions takes control of their direction, their decisions, and their future. In the end, the goal is simple: to live with awareness, to act with intention, and to remain steady regardless of circumstances. When emotions no longer rule and choices are made with clarity, life becomes more meaningful, balanced, and fulfilling. The power has always been within, and the journey is about learning how to use it wisely. The end.